Welcome to GinGee GoodEarth program. Welcome to my garden. We're going to read a chapter, production 6, part 5, The Vikings. And we'll begin with the quote of the day. As you can see, there's the chemtrail, and there's the chemtrail plane. I got a picture right over my home in New Kensington, Pennsylvania. In the midst of movement and chaos, keep stillness inside of you. Deepak Chopra. So again, in the midst of a movement, the pandemic of 2020, and chaos, where death and dying on 188 continents on Earth is occurring, keep stillness inside of you. Here comes the calling card. So I like to feature a different calling card with each program. So we'll put that there. And then I have a tavern sign. And there is a book out called The Taverns of America. And this is a tavern sign from the New York City region. And I would like to begin the Vikings. The Land to the West, Chapter 2. In the background is Irene Goodnight. Land to the West. Let's put the candle here. Chapter 2, The Vikings, written by Elizabeth Jane Way. And it's a very good book on Viking history. The Norsemen, the land of the midnight sun, because they don't have daylight like we do on the east coast of America. Again, the sagas of the Vikings, the severity and the harshest conditions they had to endure for survival. And 1,000 years ago, in the 10th century, the sailors and soldiers settled Norway and the icy coast of Iceland and Greenland. And they built manor houses and farms, and they raised sheep, cattle, and goat. And again, it's well known that they have explored the Americas 1,000 years ago. And they also hunted the walrus, and then they had sold polar bear furs and seal furs and hardwood from the forest. And they're admired for their brave and strength for surviving such hostile, volcanic, snowy, icy, inhabitable places, but they were able to be a civilization of men and women that were able to conquer the harsh terrains of continents closest to the Arctic Circle, So again, we're going to pick up on chapter 2, The Land to the West. 2 days later, they reached the farm of Thorbjorn Philipsson. Leif too tried to stand, slipped off his pony into the arms of his mother, who was laughing and crying and kissing him and scolding him all at once. Thorbjorn made a great feast for their welcome, and invited Eric to spend the winter with him. Leif was very pleased. He had never had so many boys to play with in his life before. Besides, his southern part of Iceland was a more settled district than the Northwest Peninsula. Neighbors were closer, and there was going and coming all winter long. Thorbjorn's son, Einar, was a bit suspicious of Brandon in the beginning. He said he was not used to playing with a slave boy. Leif first explained that Brandon had been born free and captured in a Viking raid, and then when Einar seemed still unimpressed, Leif challenged him to a wrestling bout and beat him. After that, Einar said no more about Brendan being beneath him, and the boys ranged over the countryside together until the winter days grew too short. Then they practiced wrestling and sword fighting with wooden blades in the haylofts, or sitting by the fire, played checkers and listened to the stories of the visitors. But if Leif was content, his mother was not. Thorbjorn was most hospitable, but Thorbjorn missed her own home, and she was worried besides about the future. She hoped that her red-haired, high-tempered husband would settle in southern Iceland, but she was sure there were plans in his head for further adventures. She told Eric of an island out in the bay where no one lived now and suggested that Eric set up a homestead there. But all Eric would say was that he would think it over. However, at the great midwinter fest of Yule, there was a visitor named Thorgest who knew this island. The place was called Sudrey, and he told Eric it was a fine place. Moreover, the visitor said he was sailing to northwest Iceland in the spring, and he had offered to stop at Eric's homestead there. He would take the house apart and bring down the lumber so that Eric could build again on Sudrey Island. Since no trees of any size grew on Iceland, it was always difficult problem to find wood for pillars and house beams. Eric finally accepted Thorgest's offer, and then Leif's mother was happier. In the spring they all moved out to Sudrey and began to build stables and sheepfolds. Leif and Brandon took the sheep and cows out to pasture while the men worked, and this gave them a fine opportunity to explore the island. They discovered a small sandy beach where they proposed to swim when it grew warm enough, and a deep cave which they told no one about, keeping it for their own secret. But as the spring turned to summer, Eric grew impatient, for Thorgest did not come with the house timbers, and Eric began to wonder whether they could be settled in their own home by the fall. At last, Eric could wait no longer and had himself rowed over to the mainland to see if he could get news of Thorgest. When he came back, he was tight-lipped with anger. Thorgest, it seemed, had calmly taken Eric's property and was building himself a new house on his farm. "Or he thinks he is," said Eric. "I'm going to show him that he's wrong." "Eric," cried Leif's mother, "not another fight. Oh, wait, please wait. It's nearly time for the court session. Go there Thorbjorn Philipson will support you and bring a case against Thurgest. That's better than fighting." "And where do we live this winter, then?" asked Eric. "In the cow barn. Thurgest will have built his house by that time and be in it. Do you think he's likely to help me tear it down again? Move the timbers here and rebuild before fall?" "No," Thurchild. "We must catch him now. Eric, please. Thorbjorn, take us in again for the winter." But Eric only said, "I look after myself, and I need no man's help." He took the stout small ship in which Thurchild had come across the bay from Hockadell the year before, and all his fighting men. This time Leif and Brandon had no chance to slip off with the men, for Eric told them to sit on a big rock by the sheepfold where they were under everyone's eyes. He threatened to tie them up like Helgi, the excited brown dog, if they moved. So the two boys watched the ship take the waves, and the sun gleaming on their striped square sail and on the row of shields along with the gunwales, they strained their eyes after her as she moved down by the bay and finally out of sight around a headland to the west. Then they had nothing to do but wait. They waited 3 days. Leif thought they were the longest 3 days in his life. Brandon's mother, Bridget, went about her work, with her lips moving constantly in prayer to the Christian God in whom the Irish believed. Thorjald, on the other hand, could only walk about as if she were in a dream. Once she asked the Irishwoman to tell her about the Christian God, but she was too worried to listen, and stopped Bridget before she had got very far. Then Eric came back. Brandon, who had been helping to cover the roof of the cow barn with sods, saw the ship first and leaped down into the yard, calling out, "There she is! There she is!" Mother ran down toward the landing beach, but Leif scrambled up on the barn to see for himself. As the ship drew nearer, they saw that she was low in the water, lashed along the sides, and across the waist of the vessel were the heavy house beams that Eric had gone to get. Leif gave a cry. "They've won! They've won!" And then he too scurried down to the beach. Eric was standing on the ship's prow as the men, having dropped the sail, rolled in her with her long oars and rowed. They used close to the land. "I've brought you your house," he called to his wife. Eric, Thorjald said, "What have you paid for it? How many men's lives?" Leif, beside her, was scanning the faces of the men at the oars, looking for the ones that were missing. Hakon and a man from Norway called Olaf and Bajinari helped us retrieve our home. Eric jumped down as the ship came up on the beach. In the rush of a wave, he strode over to his wife and took her shoulders in his two large hands. "Everything must be paid for," he said. "2 men are dead, and Bajinari is wounded, but the Thurngist lost 6 for being a thief, his 2 sons and 4 others." "Oh, Eric," said his wife, and shut her eyes. "Now we really be hunted out of Iceland by Thurgest and his friends." "I only took back my property," said Eric. "It wasn't worth it," his wife said, so low that Leif could hardly hear her. They brought Bajinari ashore with a wound in his thigh and a linen cloth stiff with blood wrapped around it. When they put him down on the beach, he said, "Hello, Leif. Well, I didn't get to the Hall of the Dead Heroes at Valhalla this time. I don't know whether I was too tough or whether they just overcrowded there right now. I'm glad they're overcrowded, said Leif, and Bajanari laughed, but when Harold and Thurston picked up again to carry him to the farm, he fainted. Leif walked beside him up to the shed. There Harold and Thurston laid him down on the pile of hay. But Eric's wife and Bridget sent Leif away before they began to dress Bajanari's wound. Then began a curious time. Eric had sworn he would not be hunted again, and his wife was right. Thirst and his friends called a special court session. Although many men tried to help Eric's cause and testified that Thurgest had robbed him, Eric was declared in the wrong. As a result, he was outlawed from all of Iceland for 3 years. When this news was brought out to the island, it was too late in the season for Eric and his family to brave the wintry seas. Eric's friends insisted that the family must not stay where Thirst could find them and wreak vengeance for his 2 dead sons. So all winter long they moved about uneasily, staying at one farm for 2 weeks or a month, and moving to another friend's homestead before a rumor of their whereabouts could reach Thirst. Bajanari was sent home to his father Haroldgulf to recover from his wound, and Leif missed him. But Harold taught both the boys to run on skis that winter, and every day while the light lasted, they were out practicing. The one thing no one dared ask Eric was what they are going to do in the spring. The men at arms, who would rather have died than gone to serve someone else, were eager to set out on a voyage for trade and plunder down to England or the coast of France. And then here is a picture of Eric the Red in this wonderful book. And the illustrations are done by Henry C. Pitts, P-I-T-Z. So we'll stop there, and we'll pick it up on page 38. And I'm going to read the beginning preface of the book on Napoleon, because I'll be reading this too. And this is dated (1904) is the first edition, and this is the very first edition. And it's called Napoleon, a short biography by R.M. Johnston, Henry and Holt and Company. And here's some coins. So I begin the preface. The preface. This book is intended to present to the reader in the most concise form possible, but yet with historical accuracy, an outline of the history of Napoleon that will convey an adequate first impression of his genius and policy. Without some knowledge of this extraordinary man and of his period, it is impossible to understand the politics, constitution, and general circumstances of modern Europe. But the literature of the Napoleonic period is so vast, probably approaching 40,000 books, that the reader who feels disposed can get some acquaintance with it is frequently unable to find a practicable way through the maze. It may be said without disparagement to their writers that any one of the 3 or 4 best general histories of Napoleon taken alone is inadequate to convey sufficient impression of the man and his times. But to Napoleonic literature as a whole there is no key. A complete bibliography is so vast an undertaking that even the labors of Baron Lombroso and Herr Kirchensen appear to offer little promise of completion. The latter's select bibliography is the best available guide, but however valuable for the student, some 200 pages of bare bibliographer entries cannot be of great service to those possessing some previously acquired knowledge. In its part of the purpose of the present work to enable the ordinary reader or the would-be student safely to take first steps in Napoleonic literature, avoiding the innumerable books of little or no authority, and getting some sort of notion beforehand of what those here recommended are likely to give him. As to the narrative itself, the desire to attain conciseness combined with the true proportion presents difficulties and disadvantages, results in unavoidable gaps. Thus, no attempt can be made to narrate the numerous military operations of Napoleon on the same scale. Certain campaigns and battles, Wagram, Austerlitz, Waterloo, for instance, have been treated more fully as being of special importance politically or strategically. Others have been passed over with a bare mention, though not without the due consideration for the clearness and continuity of the narrative. Where details and anecdotes have been brought in, it has invariably been for the purpose of illustrating broad issues, to furnish a correct outline of Napoleonic history, and to point the way along which it may be profitably pursued, that nothing more is what this book aims at effecting. This new edition is revised to date in the bibliographies and is corrected in a few typographical and other slips. Its appearance coincides with that of my French Revolution, of which it forms the continuation, which the reader kindly noted. However, that this is not a short history, as that but a short bibliography. The one book continues the other, but in different key. Cambridge, Massachusetts, April 1909. In one of the devastating fires of the century, the 21st century, was the burning down of the Notre Dame. And you can look that up on the internet. And so much was lost. The history of France, the beautiful paintings, and then again, remember Brazil. And we have a doll here that's from Brazil. And again, the burning down of the Brazil. I just love her shoes. She's got really nice. That's where platforms were invented. See? She's got the platform shoes. But this doll was from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with a petticoat slip underneath. And I have a bigger doll too. I have a... Anywho, so just to mention, in memory of the Brazil Museum that was completely burnt down. And I have no idea why museums are targets. Maybe you can tell me. I guess I do know. But it's very sad because I love history. And again, I'm committed to reading antique books and trying to have interplay, artistically, creative, fun-filled adventures to educate my audience on history and how valuable humanity is to all the 9 continents of the world. And without further ado, we'll end this program, and we're going to pick up with the universal history of the United States of America, and then I have an edition of the poetry on cats, and we'll continue with this also. So have a great day. And there's Chippy the Chickmunk. Enjoy the picture show for the next episode. And I will rotate pictures and add new pictures. And there's chemtrails, okay? which are very dangerous to our health, and there's the chemtrail plague. So it does exist, and I'm very sad-hearted about that. Okay, have a great day, and on YouTube, you know, I am a YouTuber. GinGee GoodEarth is my YouTube channel, and I also watch You Are Free TV with Julie. She's military. And I also watch Dustin Nemos. And then I also watch Blessed to Teach, News Next Network News, and Josh Bernstein, and H.A. Goodman for 5 years. And again, these are wonderful, you know, journalists, reporters who give us the truth of the news on current events around the world. And again, I encourage you to subscribe to Epic Times newspaper, which I enjoy reading, and they have the same type of lifestyle sections, current news section, worldly news, local news, and it's, you know, great reading on the stock market and finance, and so this is great. I want you to have a great day, and every morning wake up with a song in your heart. And let's repeat the poem that I read earlier. I'll read a new one. Courage is a kind of salvation. Plato. Courage is a kind of salvation. Plato. Have a great day.